there's a few more people hopping on. And I'd like to start off with the agenda for today's online meeting. We're going to start off with just a brief introduction from myself. Then we're going to have a couple people speak about report backs from the different climate health action teams in each of the states that we're working in. We're going to hear from Maryland and talk about some of the successes and challenges of, and I think we've had a great deal of success with the last action from the last webinar of getting health professionals to sign on to the letter to President Obama. Afterwards, we're going to hear from a guest speaker on solar power. That's going to be at about 8:15, and right afterwards, we're going to have a question and answer session. So if there's anyone with questions for our guest speaker, you'll be able to either type them into the box or raise your hand on the right-hand side of the webinar screen. You should have a little hand icon, and if you click on that, I can unmute you so that you can ask your question. Right after that, we're going to talk about the health impacts and how the transition to solar power is going to affect our health. That's going to be presented by our Executive Director, Dr. Katherine. Directly after that, the Environment and Health Director here at PSR, Robert Lahey, is going to talk about this month's action, writing to the editor about elevating the health voice on the transition to renewable energy and why solar is such an important component of that. And then afterwards, we'll sign off, and we'll be talking about next month's webinar. So I'd like to go ahead and get started. It looks like we have a lot of folks have hopped on in the last few minutes. Welcome, everyone. This is the second online meeting of PSR's Climate Health Action Teams. This is, again, Kelly Benjamin. I'm the climate organizer with PSR National. We're very excited to have you with us as we move forward with this initiative to raise a strong national health voice calling for immediate action on climate change. Now is the time. What we're hoping to do with these climate health action teams is to, work with existing organizations in your states to replace dirty coal-fired power plants with clean energy solutions. As many of you know, the Clean Power Plan that was proposed by President Obama and the EPA is now being taken to the states. The states are developing a plan on how they're going to cut their carbon emissions back to 2005 levels. Every state has to develop a state implementation plan, and part of PSR's goal with the Climate Health Action Teams is to have at least 10 states that implement a plan based upon only on energy efficiency and renewable energy. And so, first we start by fighting, to close these coal-fired plants, and then by arguing against fracking and what the public health impacts are, and raising that voice. We've seen the benefits of that in New York State, which recently banned fracking based upon the health argument, and now it's absolutely essential that we advocate the health argument for clean energy solutions for the entire climate change arena. I'd like to start out with a brief report back. Last month's action, we had a letter to President Obama that health professionals were signing on to. I have in front of me a document that folks, of all the people that have signed on through the PSR website. We're at approaching 1,200 signatures, and that's directly through the PSR website. That's not including folks that have printed up the website from PSR, went around to their colleagues and other health professionals to have them sign on and then sent it in themselves. So it's very successful, and I'd like to open it up and see if anyone out there from the Climate Health Action Teams would like to report back on their successes and challenges challenges with getting other health professionals to sign on. Is Sarah from Maryland on the line?
Can you hear me, Kelly?
Yes, you are unmuted.
Okay, terrific. So you want me to talk a bit about what's going on in Maryland?
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay, I think initially about 14 people signed up to join the Maryland chat team, and I will confess that we've had limited success actually rallying these folks. Many of them have not actually communicated with me, and if any of you are on the webinar, I would so love to hear from you. A few of them realized that they were actually too busy, but the bright spot is there's one team member who has tremendous energy and has been really helping and pushing things forward, and that's Al Bartlett. So he and I think, are getting quite a few things done, although I wish we had more team support. I'll tell you about a couple of things we're doing, because I think this might, in my mind, the chats in different states will be probably involved in doing different things depending on what's going on in the state. So Al's an MD, he's a pediatrician, and so he has a lot of MD friends, and I believe he sent out the letter to a number of his friends in sort of a chain letter fashion, hoping that they will then pass it on, and I think he's had pretty good success with that. I'm not an MD, so I haven't done that myself. The other thing that Al and I have been focusing on is working on energy issues right here in Maryland. We have a legislative session that only runs for 3 months, January through March, and there are a number of very important renewable energy bills on the slate this year, increasing our renewable portfolio to 40% from 20%. And there's a bill out there to clean up what's classified as renewables. Right now, some not very nice things are classified as renewable, like black liquor and some biomass, which may not be that great. Nuclear's in there. And something I'm working on a lot myself is to try to help revive some regulations to limit NOx emissions, which of course is an important component of ozone. And we have a new governor who just was inaugurated in January, and on his second day he pulled this regulation, which was just about to be implemented. So Al and I are joining with the Sierra Club on this, and we're doing advocacy at the state level to try to get Governor Hogan to revive this and put this regulation back in action. We're also working with Environment Maryland, another group who's very interested recently in trying to pull more health professionals into climate change action. So we'll be working with them. So we're not. I would say we have not had wonderful success in the letter, but we have other opportunities that I think will help us be successful here in Maryland.
Thank you, Sarah. I know that there's been a great deal of success in some places like I know Massachusetts and in Minnesota. There's been folks signing on to the letter. I think part of the challenge is just trying to pull together, and we've been trying to work on this in a few states, is pulling together. We're doing these monthly calls, and then about 2 weeks after the calls, I think that pulling together just a statewide chat call with folks that have signed up for the climate health action teams, and just getting together and talking about the action, talking about I had a call today with some of the folks in Florida talking about different. We're kind of thinking ahead about the letter to the editor and talking about different newspapers to pitch it to, and different positions that we can reach out to in different parts of the state. I appreciate your report back, and I know it is challenging, but this is part of the important work of organizing in the health community. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our guest speaker today, who was kind enough to join us. Robert Lahey is the Strategic Business Development Manager for SunPower Corporation. This is a vertically integrated solar products and services company that designs, manufactures, and markets high-performance solar electric power technology, including solar cells and solar panels. They also produce residential panels for homeowners and and solar solutions for businesses and government agencies. Robert, are you on the line?
I am.
Thank you for joining us. And can we see? Can folks see your screen? Yes, I see it. So perfect. I think your screen is queued up, and take it away.
Thank you, Kelly. It's a pleasure to be speaking with everyone this afternoon or evening for those of you on the East Coast. As Kelly mentioned, SunPower is a vertically integrated solar company, and we turned 30 years old this year, founded in 1985, and we really try and position ourselves as industry thought leaders and try and increase awareness. So we're very happy to have groups like Physicians for Social Responsibility interested in advocating for our work. So with that, the first slide. I was asked to address a few questions in preparing materials today, and the first one, and I mentioned the most interesting, is solar a real option for Americans today? And the answer is yes, absolutely, but it's still a pretty recent phenomenon, and if you're not in a hot solar market like New York City metro area or California or Hawaii, you might not be aware of just how much solar activity there's been in just the last couple of years. So this chart shows total global cumulative solar installations going back to 1995. And you'll notice a few inflection points on the graph. One is around 2005. That's when SunPower opened our first manufacturing facility, Fab 1. And at the time, most of our panels were going to Europe, and they were driven really by subsidy events. Germany and a few other countries really put a value on sustainability when it was sort of a stretch from an economic perspective to the homeowner at that time. In the U.S., we are a U.S.-based company and have always had a healthy business here, but it was a lot smaller just 10 years ago. And the folks who ended up buying were really either doing it for strong commitment to environmental causes, or there were folks who had some sort of concern for security or being off-grid. These are clearly not large markets that got us excited. But we were in Europe for a while. We still are. And in that time, we got our first fab up and running, and then we did our second one, our third one, and we're on our fifth now. And we have some competitors in the solar space. Other companies were doing the same. And we achieved a scale that allowed our costs to come down in a very dramatic fashion. And that's what led to the second inflection point farther along around 2010. So the price of a solar panel dropped in excess of 80% during that time. In parallel, SunPower and a handful of other solar companies married that technology with financial products, and it changed how people bought solar power, and it's what allowed it to make it available and a real option for Americans today. So if you were to be a California native resident 5 or 6 years ago and you wanted to go solar, your pretty much only option was to get your checkbook out and be ready to write a check for in excess of $50,000. And you would measure and evaluate that investment on a payback period. So you would hope that the savings that you would get from not paying the utility would offset that $50,000 investment fully, and it would probably take 8 years or maybe even more in order to do that. And that's a pretty long period of time, especially considering that most people own their home only for 8 to 10 years. So what we changed was we started not just selling the panels, but we started selling the power. So there are options today through either lease, PPA, or loan. PPA stands for Power Purchase Agreement, where consumers don't have to write any checks up front. If you're paying PG&E $300 today, you can instead pay SunPower or another solar company $250. We were able to basically harness all the benefits and take away those upfront costs. And that's what really caused this line graph to really do the hockey stick effect from 2010 to 2015. So it very much is a real option for Americans today. Those financing solutions I described are available, depending on who you talk to, in about 6 to 12 states. And those include most of the large population states. They would include New York, California, Texas is ramping up. So it is very much a real option, and it's a pure economic one for most folks. They are very much concerned about the environment, but by going solar, you save money today. So that's a powerful sales proposition. On the next slide, I was also asked whether or not solar is really putting a dent in climate change and helping to decommission coal power plants. Well, this is the exact same graph as the previous slide. The only difference is I changed the y-axis to encompass the current global electricity generation capacity. And you can see the solar decommissioning solar plants, not really today. We are putting power through power plants and solar on people's homes that are sufficient for millions of people to enjoy clean, renewable power. But the world has billions of people. So even if you were to add to this graph wind, biomass, fuel cells running on biogas, the graph wouldn't change materially. Coal power plants are being decommissioned, but it's natural gas and the EPA that are having the biggest impact most recently, not solar yet. So next slide. In order for us to start having a more meaningful contribution, we need to keep growing and grow faster, and that's exactly our plan. We are building new facilities to manufacture more solar panels as we speak, and as an industry, we're on a trajectory right now, we believe, to deploy $5 trillion by 2035. Which would get us close to 10% of total electricity demand. And what makes it really achievable and gives us confidence, and it's one of the reasons why I left my job as an investment banker to join a solar company, is that it's pretty much all incentive-free at this point. Gone are the days when we're operating in Germany and being very much dependent on some sort of government subsidy that may or may not exist with a future administration. In the United States, pretty much all the subsidies are gone at the state level, and that's okay. We're thriving without them, and there is one federal incentive left, and it's about to be stepped down, and we're fully prepared to do that. So it's quite an exciting area. In order to keep the momentum, though, our focus is going to be to make it affordable and simple, and to do that for all segments. So a lot of this line graph includes power plants. SunPower builds power plants that go for in excess of $2 billion each. So we also have a division called distributed generation, which is also a very significant part of our business, but we want it to grow even more. And the next slide highlights what we call the distributed generation or the DG opportunity. And here you'll see a little bit more detail on the evolution of our business and how we went from the pioneers in the early days to the early adopters to mass adoption. So we're really just completing the early adopters right now. These are folks that need an economic incentive, but are to some extent motivated by environmental sustainability. We do a lot of marketing studies on our existing customer base, so we're measuring very carefully why people are going solar, and we have pretty concrete evidence that the customer profile is becoming a lot more mainstream. So looking to 2015 to 2035, we believe it's going to be 142 million homes and facilities with solar directly on the roof. And that's in addition to all of the power plants that we're going to build. And combined, those will get us close to 10% of total electricity supplied. And at the same time, other renewables are going to contribute toward supplying global electricity demand in U.S., of course. But SunPower is also partnering or creating a lot of new energy efficiency and energy management technologies that are going to attack the power question from another side. So we won't just have to be replacing coal power plants. We could reduce the overall demand. And the next slide highlights some of our plans for the near term. I was asked to discuss what could go wrong. What are the challenges, technical and regulatory? One of the biggest ones is sort of getting going too fast. And the state of Hawaii has been a very interesting test case for us. Hawaii has power prices that are double the rest of the United States because they have to ship in and burn diesel. So we were able to penetrate the overall market in excess of 5% when most states are below 1 or 2%. And what happened was the utility started reporting safety concerns with their distribution lines, because all these solar systems are connected to the grid, and during certain parts of the day, power is fed back into the grid. So Hawaii is a pretty small portion of the overall United States market, but it's been a very good market for us to learn and prepare for future events so that we can keep growing. And the way we intend to is part technology. We're developing battery storage solutions that can capture solar power at its peak and deploy it either at night or at peak power pricing times to save consumers even more money. And we're also trying to engage utilities and the regulators to have a thoughtful approach so that we can anticipate these events coming and making sure that everyone is safe from the utility side, and that people who want solar can continue to get it. What can you, physicians and citizens, do to help solar adoption? Well, first and foremost would be to go solar yourselves. You could do this by going to sunpower.com right now or later tonight. Second, encourage, if you have interaction with your local and federal representatives, at the local level, what's most important for us is a streamlined permitting process. This is different in every jurisdiction, but if you want solar today, in some places it'll take up to 6 months. It only takes about 3 days to actually install the system. The 6-month delay is attributable to getting permission from all the various different entities that need to weigh in. And then on the federal level, as I mentioned, there's a tax credit that is set to expire at the end of 2016. We are ready for that. We have our own internal cost curve that is prepared to continue to sell power at attractive levels to consumers. But we do advocate that it would be a lot healthier for the industry to have a gradual step down as opposed to a cliff. The wind industry experienced the cliff quite recently, and it wasn't the healthiest thing for anyone from our perspective. So I will pause there, and anyone who wants to question, feel free to chime in.
So, and a reminder, if anybody would like to ask a question, there's the little hand icon on the right-hand corner of your screen, the GoToWebinar control panel. I don't see anyone's, and you can also type in your question at the bottom of the screen. It looks like there is is that a question mark from, let's see.
There was one question. There was one question that was typed in, and that was from Alfred Bartlett. To what extent are we talking about distributed solar, home building rooftop versus commercial scale PV?
Well, we're doing everything. SunPower believes that there is a solution for all of those segments. Our power plant business tends to be a little bit lumpy because those are big systems, so they aren't really consistent. If you look back on sort of what we deploy, it doesn't fit like a third power plant, a third commercial, a third residential. It tends to be a little bit more lumpy. But in terms of our resources, we tend to attack all three of those with a strong amount of resources. So everything is absolutely on the table. There are on all the graphs I showed, there are very healthy contributions from residential systems on folks' roofs, from commercial systems on everything from small businesses and 7-Elevens to airports and Costco's, Walmart's, and also power plants. No of residential, commercial, and power plants. Not one of those segments is less than 10 or 15%, I would say, for us or the industry.
Thank you. I have a question from Dr. Bruce Becker. Bruce, you're unmuted.
Okay. Good evening. I'm a physician in San Diego. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Just a point. I'm on actually a sustainability board here in the city that I live in, and one of the more notable accomplishments of solar, distributed solar, is something that I hope the speaker is aware of. Last May, we had a very big heat wave. Oftentimes, we have brownouts or power outages due to these kind of events. And we didn't have it last year when we had this prolonged heat wave with lots of fires. And I have read and also been told by knowledgeable people that a big reason we didn't have power problems is because of all the distributed generation, that although it's not offsetting the construction of power plants, at least it was providing peak power during the middle of the day when I guess demand is often the highest. So I would hope that the SunPower folks, and by the way, I've had SunPower panels on my house and loved them since 2010, so I guess I'm one of those early adopter folks. I hope it's just something that you could share with your customers and that we could perhaps share with prospective people when we talk about solar, is although it may not shut down coal-powered plants right away, it can be really helpful at certain times of day and help prevent the construction of future coal plants.
Thank you for the comment. Absolutely agree. San Diego is a great solar market, by the way, and I'm glad to hear you're happy with your system. And it's a good point. And we do, in my role, I have to interface a lot with our Wall Street investors, and there's a perception about a lot of renewables, wind and solar specifically, that it's not a viable solution because it's peak, as you said, because it's technically peak power. But there's a predictability to solar that is quite distinguished from other technologies. And while it's not a perfect fit with when people need their electricity, it's pretty close. When the sun is strongest, it's right when people are getting ready to go home to work. So it is a nice fit. And as we bring in more storage solutions going forward, I think that's when you're going to see a lot of even more game-changing events.
Yeah, I think that would be a really important thing to add, and many times I've heard people get frustrated when they've got solar on their roof, but they can't tap into any of that power, which would obviously be really helpful during the time of power outage. How far out are you having residential solutions or some kind of energy?
So there is a product in the market today. It's a type of inverter that goes with your SunPower system. That'll have a plug in it that'll allow you to do some basic, charge your phone and things like that. Folks in the Northeast who have solar on their roofs really appreciated having that technology a couple of years ago when Superstorm Sandy hit. But you're right. That's another common misconception at the consumer level. When there is a blackout, your system is hooked up to the power grid, so you will not have full access to that power. And in some cases, if you don't have the right inverter product, you may not have any access. So that absolutely it is on the roadmap, and more to come soon.
Okay, I have. I'm going to unmute Maureen McHugh. Maureen, I noticed you typed a question into the comment box. Did you have a question, Maureen?
Yeah, I typed in a bunch of them as he was going along, because in the very first part he talked about, well, this is when we had our first fab. I had no clue what a first fab was. The other thing was I didn't have any idea about how many states he was actually working in, and or how many states and companies are out there doing the work he's doing. And then really getting to the inverter and the storage issue, what does he see on the horizon? That seems to be the real sticking point for any of the alternative energy, and I just keep trying to hound people to tell me how we're going to get over that hump.
Okay, I got a few questions there, and you were breaking up a little bit in the middle, but I think I got everything. First, a fab, my apologies, industry jargon. That's what we call factories. Those are manufacturing lines that produce solar panels. I think you also asked about what states you can get solar in today, how many, which ones. So SunPower has a manufacturer's a dealer network that spans 45 states. So unless you're in, I believe it's Alaska, North Dakota, South Dakota, Mississippi, and Alabama. Every other state, there is an authorized SunPower dealer who can give you a quote on a solar system. You can go to our website, enter your zip code, assuming you're in one of those 45 states. So someone will give you a call. That said, of those 45 states, unless you're in one of the 6 big ones, like New York or California, Arizona, we're starting to do things in other states, then you won't necessarily have access to some of the finance products that I referred to, the zero down money lease. You will have access to a loan. So you can get a finance product. It's popular with states that are on the bubble in terms of economics, and for customers in good states where they want benefits of owning their own solar power system, but they don't want to have to write a large upfront check. In terms of how many other companies, SunPower is our own dealer network is about 400 independent contractors in the United States. Most of our competitors have their own sort of smaller networks. Ours is the largest. And then there are a few national installers, small handful, less than 10. So those are most people's options in terms of going solar. We're the only ones, I would note, that make the panels and provide the service. All the other national installers would just source some other panel. And then your question about storage. Sorry, I couldn't hear if you were trying to do a follow-up. But your questions about storage, yes, we absolutely believe that this is the future, and then we're investing resources to make the technology more affordable. It's sort of similar to where solar panels were a few years ago. So the cost of a system, if you want to install storage, is significant today. And it tends to be popular for more early adopters. In California, if you have a concern about an earthquake, storage is a popular product. And we tend to sell most in new home constructions, where it gets wrapped in as part of the overall system, and often integrated with electric charging, for cars and energy management systems. So you will absolutely see, it'll start with press releases and pilot programs, but you will see that offering grow throughout the year and future years.
Okay. Thank you very much, both of you. And I think there's one last question that we can squeeze in before we move along. This is from Joellen Hirsch. I have unmuted you, Joellen.
Hi, how are you? I'm a physician in North Carolina, and my question to Mr. Lahey is, have you worked with, or are you interested in working with any community organizations that have formed for the purpose of purchasing solar as a joint venture, so that they can negotiate better rates with installers and better loan products and so forth, to bring the cost down for everyone, and also to get a lot of people to solarize quickly?
Well, thank you for the question. Community organizations absolutely are a very important part of our business. It's difficult to answer your question on a national basis. The answer to your question is yes, absolutely, but the extent of our involvement varies quite a lot. One of the more interesting ways we've been interacting with community groups lately is communities observe that most people going solar today are people that own their own homes and are middle or upper income. So there's a push to provide access for solar to folks who rent, either in houses or they're in some sort of apartment dwelling, and also the more moderate to middle or lower income brackets. So one of the creative solutions that us and others in the industry are working on is a concept called community solar. And if you haven't seen that in North Carolina, I suspect you will more. I know Duke is very involved. But the concept there is similar to a community garden. If you're a renter, you can designate, you can buy basically a couple of panels on a community garden, so that the power generation going to your dwelling, you can know comes from solar, and it can be owned as a co-op. It could be owned in partnership by the utility or by a third party. But these kind of discussions are new and require some creative financing solutions. And of the work that's been done to date, community organizations have absolutely been critical.
Okay, thank you so much for the great questions, and thank you, Robert, for your time this evening. I'd like to turn it over to our executive director here at Physicians for Social Responsibility to talk about how this impacts our health, how transitioning to solar and making solar a reality. We've just heard about the viability of solar and how this is important to our health. So, Katherine, are you on? You should be able to unmute yourself.
Okay. I am unmuted, so can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. This is just going to take a few moments. It really, because the Clean Power Plan does not specifically look at just solar versus wind, this very short segment basically just underscores the issues around the health co-benefits of coming off fossil fuels. And for some reason, my slides have a hard time advancing. Okay. I think I need a new computer. Here we go. That's one way to do it. So, of course, as everybody who is part of PSR, and the majority of you on the line know that there are many, many health impacts of coal, and the Clean Power Plan obviously is trying to get us off coal. Those health impacts start with our mining and transport, and of course the significant pollution from combustion. So you get heavy metal emissions, sulfur dioxide and acid rain, the particulates, which result in heart attack, stroke, asthma, and a whole variety of other health issues. Nitrous oxides, which contributes to ground level ozone. Again, it's very serious health threat. And then, of course, the carbon pollution, which leads us to the climate impact of coal combustion. And last but not least is the coal ash and its storage. Of course, we know that a third of all Americans live in areas where air pollution standards are not met at some point in the year. And that's from, in general, the burning of fossil fuels overall, but at least half of which is due to coal. One of the first studies that looked specifically at coal plants was the air pollution damages, and it was estimated from analysis of all the damages that the air pollution from coal-burning power plants cause, that $62 billion per year are wasted or are caused by coal-burning power plants and coal combustion. Dr. Jonathan Levy at Boston University with colleagues at Harvard and Syracuse looked at the benefits of implementing a program such as the Clean Power Plan, which of course uses a flexible approach state by state to reduce coal by changing the fuel. So a lot of the switching would be for some of it would be natural gas, and then of course also investment in energy efficiency and renewables such as solar and wind. I put the website here where Dr. Levy had given a webinar about 5 months ago outlining his results. And one of the largest was that there are definitely co-benefits to implementing a clean power plan using clean renewables and efficiency and reducing our coal. The first and most dramatic is a reduction in premature deaths of 3,500, avoiding over 1,000 hospital admissions per year, and 220 heart attacks prevented each year. Of course, these types of air pollution reduction health benefits come relatively quickly, within days of shutting down coal-burning power plants. And again, the website is listed here where these studies are found. The health co-benefits will be found in all the states with reduction in coal. The top 12 are listed here in terms of states. The co-benefits are greatest where there's higher population density, large number of people exposed to the air pollutants from coal burning, and the areas where the air quality will improve the most. There aren't studies specifically looking at the health benefits of solar in and of itself. I certainly know that I have great peace of mind knowing I have solar panels on my roof, and I encourage everybody to, at the minimum, get an estimate so that you go through the motions of finding out what qualities there are. There are still a whole lot of questions that were not answered from the attendees. You know, will your house host solar panels? Is there a co-op in your neighborhood? 42 out of 50 states do have leasing options, but some do not, like Virginia. So finding out those answers helps you explain the potential of solar to your colleagues and your ability to advocate that to our policymakers. Thanks.
Thank you, Katherine. And I'd like to turn it over now to the E&H director here at Physicians for Social Responsibility, Barb Gottlieb. Barb, are you on?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me, Kelly?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So, hi everybody. Glad to be with you. What I'm going to do in the last few minutes of our webinar is to talk with you about the action that we'd like you to take in the coming months. So a lot of you have been circulating that petition letter to President Obama. Keep on working on that. You've got about 3 more weeks to collect those signatures. But we'd also like you to take on another I beg your pardon. We'd like you to take on another task for the coming months, and that is to write a letter to the editor. Can everybody, can you see my screen, Kelly?
Yes, I can.
Okay, that's great. So even before you start writing your letter, here are just a few very, very basic things to keep in mind. Keep your letter short. Most newspapers establish limits that many newspapers will not print a letter that's more than 200 or 250 words. That's only about a half a page typed, single-spaced. So you really need to count. If you want to find out what your newspaper's policy is in terms of length, check their letters page or their website. when you're writing a letter, it's really important to remember that you're writing to a local audience. All but a very few newspapers, maybe not the New York Times, maybe not the Washington Post, but most other newspapers in the country are going to be looking for information that local readers will relate to. So we suggest that you open with a local hook. Here's an example from a model letter that was provided for us by the Center for Climate Change Communication at George Mason University. Many thanks to them. Many thanks to Mary Beth Montoro in particular who drafted that letter for us. So here's what she suggests as a possible opening. Despite regulatory action that has been taken to reduce carbon gas emissions, the Baltimore-Washington corridor currently ranks 8th on the American Lung Association's list of the most polluted metropolitan areas in the country. So if you live in Maryland or even if you live in D.C., that's something that, as a reader, you're going to sit up and take note of. For people from other states, I'm offering another possible suggestion. Talk about local weather. Talk about, how many of you all have been hammered by cold and snow recently? Lots and lots. So you can talk about that and talk about how that may be a result of climate change, as the second example suggests. And here's a red-hot tip for you. To increase your chances of the paper printing your letter, mention a particular article that was printed recently in that newspaper, mention the headline, mention the date of publication. Next step, describe the health risks associated with power plant pollution. So once again, from Mary Beth Montoro, air pollution resulting from the combustion of fossil fuels at, and here you could even name your local coal-fired power plant, has been linked to cancer, cardiovascular disease, respiratory illness, and developmental disorders. Or if you're following the second example, talk about what the impact of extreme weather has been on health. Certainly we have plenty of examples from the cold and the snow, and if you're in another part of the country, you might be talking about droughts or forest fires. Another tip, a well-chosen fact or statistic helps establish credibility. Now, because we are the Climate Health Action Teams and we're going to be turning our attention to the Clean Power Plan, you might want to try and work that into your letter. Here's a way that this was done very briefly, sort of mentioning that the US EPA is going to finalize the Clean Power Plan, mention that each state will have to produce its plant, and then I thought what Mary Beth Montoro did very cleverly for us in this short paragraph was pivot back to the local concern. Many local residents may wonder, what does this mean for Marylanders? What does this mean for those of us who live in California? And again, here's the pitch that we as the Climate Health Action Teams are going to be making in the months to come. Let's start working on it now. We're really pushing for energy efficiency and renewable energy. So this paragraph is maybe a little bit long, but it starts out, referring to what was just said. Our state is going to be drafting its plan under the Clean Power Plan. People should know that energy efficiency and renewable energy offer healthy, clean options or healthy, clean solutions. And that's really going to be our drumbeat in the months to come. So you'll want to be mentioning that in your letter. The tip to bear in mind, make one point, then stop. You might even argue with me that my paragraph is a little bit too long, and you may be right. By the way, these paragraphs, as well as the complete model letters, will be available to you. We'll post them on our website, and we may even, we'll post them on our website, and we'll send out links to you in the next few days. When you close your letter, you want to make a call for action. Knowledge is important, knowledge is good, but we want people to do something with this action. So here's where you can also insert yourself and really speak from your own identity. So speaking as a Vermont doctor, or speaking as a Nevada nurse, or speaking as a health practitioner, a public health practitioner in Texas, I'd like to urge every citizen in my state who cares about health to encourage our policymakers to, and then once again, you get a refrain, move towards clean energy, move towards healthy energy, such as solar, to promote a healthier future. So it's really valuable to use your own voice, identify your identity, as it were, as part of your letter. If you're not a doctor, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a health professional of any sort, but I could say I'm a member of Physicians for Social Responsibility, and hopefully many of you could say that as well. Oh boy. Sorry, I think I've just lost. There we go. Sorry. When you sign your letter, these are general rules that the newspapers provide. It might vary a little bit from paper to paper, but they want your full name. If you're a health professional, be sure and include that. That really is part of the strength of your voice. Most newspapers will ask you to include your home address, your email address, a daytime phone number. These will not be published. Don't worry about that. The phone number, for example, is so that they can call you and verify that the letter really is from you. And finally, if you have any personal or financial interest in the subject matter, please do disclose that with your signature. Send your letter via email. You want it to get in fast. You want it to be timely. Letters may be edited by the newspaper. They won't check with you to see if you like the edit. That's one of the reasons you really want to stay within their word limits. Most newspapers won't publish a letter from the same person more than every 2 months. And one last point, your letter has to be unique. So when we do post these model letters on the website, please don't just cut and paste. It would be really embarrassing and really awkward if 2 people in the same state ended up sending the same letter. Don't do that. Let the letter be yours. It will be a stronger and a better letter and more likely to be printed. Finally, if you do get published, let us know. There's my email address on the slide. Just drop me an email, send me a note saying I did it, and send us a link to your letter if it was published in an online version. If not, we certainly accept, paper in an envelope. So that would be great. So we really hope to have all of you active writing your letters to the editor in the coming months. Take what Rob has been telling us about the viability of solar energy. Take what Katherine, Dr. Thomason was telling us about the health benefits. Weave some of that into your letter. Once again, slides will be made available to you. We'll post the tape, the video of this webinar online, so you can come back and mine these presentations for the facts that you need, write your letters, get them out to the press. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Barb. And thank you to everyone who joined us today for this webinar. Special thanks to Rob Lahey for presenting that very informative information. And I just, we're about at the end of the hour. I wanted to remind folks that there is a plethora of information at psr.org, our website. If you go to the Environment and Health tab, you can click on that and find our Climate Health Action Teams page. There is a webinar schedule on the left-hand side of the screen, and you will find that our very next online meeting will be taking place on March 18th, which is the day after St. Patrick's Day, same time, 8 p.m., and we'll be talking about the many faces of energy efficiency, how we're going to utilize energy efficiency as well as renewable energy to lower our reliance on fossil fuels. And that will be in exactly 1 month. I hope everyone can join us. In the meantime, I will be checking in, or either myself or Barb will be checking in with folks to talk about how to strengthen the chat in your state. Thanks a lot. Have a great evening, and hope to talk to everyone soon. Thanks for joining us. Take care, everyone.